Hello and welcome to another episode of Atomic Vinyl Reviews. My name is Jacob and I'm here with my little doggy. Her name is Coffee. You may have seen her on the channel before when she was much smaller, though she's still incredibly tiny and adorable, as you can see. But today we are doing a kind of an unboxing video. So we're going to be taking a look at some custom 3D printed replacement heads for the MonsterArts King Ghidorah. These were made by Zetto.Jo, and I believe they might have actually been 3D printed or distributed by Jinzo Studios. I've already taken a look at one of them, and I have some photos up on my Atomic Vinyl Reviews Instagram page. I'll have links to that in the description below. But now I actually want to get a good look at all three of them. They originally came posted in this little squishy bag thing here, and in a Ziploc, and they're all individually nicely wrapped in bubble wrap here. I do have a bit of an issue with this because these are very delicate, and I know they're nicely bubble wrapped, and this is like a little padded envelope and all that sort of stuff, and that's all great. But honestly, for something as delicate as you're going to see these things are, I don't think this is the best way to post them, and I'm going to kind of show you why in a second. But first, let's kind of see what we got in here. So, we got our three little sachets with all of our little heads. Just got three of them. So this is set A. There's an option to get like a set A and a set B, I think. I think the slightly different designs, the faces, and the other set B came with some like neck joints as well, which help kind of integrate this to the original figure, which in my case I've got way up there. So we're not going to be taking that Ghidorah down for this video, but just to give you guys an idea, they're the original heads. They're not accurate at all. I don't know why, but pretty much every figure of the 2019 Legendary Pictures Ghidorah had inaccurate heads, aside from the super expensive ones that are like the really sort of niche huge figures that we're kind of getting from like Spiral Studios, or like the upcoming X Plus, or the W Dragon, which is coming out now, or later in the year, which I'm really excited about. But for some reason, like the Playmates figure, hypermodeling series, or the Bandai, all of those, they all had these inaccurate heads, and I believe that's because they were probably given the opportunity to make the figures while the film was still in production, and I think they switched out the design close to the release of the film, and hence none of the figures actually matched the actual design in the film. That's my working theory at the moment. But regardless, it's such a tragedy in my eyes, because MonsterArts, for the most part, are my like go-to movie-accurate versions of these kaiju. And this figure was really quite hefty price-wise, and I wasn't really able to get anything much more high-end than it. So I basically don't have a proper movie-accurate representation of this guy in my collection, and it's just such a shame, because usually MonsterArts do so good with that. I mean, got our other 90s Ghidorah here, which is just perfect. It's phenomenal. Got, you know, a classic kaiju here, Biollante, our 89 Goji. We got our Burning Godzilla, who's not in focus. All just perfection. But then you got these weird heads, and like the necks and the heads, they're all too big. The wings, even though they're massive, are probably a little bit small compared to how they actually were, but that's understandable. It's almost not noticeable. And generally this thing tends to fall apart, which is, you know, neither here nor there, but it's really the design of the heads that bothers me. So, we got some custom heads in these little packages over here, so let's get down here and actually open them up. So, we got Itch, it's number 1, and this one should say Ni, which is number 2 in Japanese, and Kevin, which is the left head, the slightly quirky one. So that's really cute, I love that. And here we have like little joint adapters here. So these are kind of what the ball joints will stick into, and these will be like glued into the backs of these heads, I believe. Got 3 of those. We got the tongues, so I think we're missing one. They're probably hanging around somewhere on some bit of tape here, because I did have all 3. Unless they're still in the bag. I'm sure we'll find that one in a sec. When I originally opened these up, they were all like stuck to these bits of tape. So that's probably where that one is. But what I do want to show you is, because I did already open up this head, is unfortunately there is some minor damage. Alright, so hopefully you can see all that. We got our Kevin, so this is the one I have opened before. Just take the tape off. And there is our little head. So, first thing that struck me is these are so tiny, really, really small, and very, very delicately made. Just look at that. And for something that's 3D printed, the sheen on this and the smoothness is impeccable. It's definitely done in one of those fancy pants newer methods, those newer 3D printers. I was probably more aware of... Oh, I found the little tongue here. So there's all 3 of those tongues. Keep those safe. I was more aware of like this method of 3D printing that leaves like this sheen effect, because these lines are all over the sculpt, as you can see, because this is done in layers, and they're quite broad, thick layers compared to however this is done. I'm not too familiar, but unfortunately, despite this being beautiful and just the design is so perfect, it really captures the look of this kaiju, because I really love the distinctive designs that they gave Ghidorah. I much prefer the look of the faces in the final film than what we got, say, on the MonsterArts figure or any of the other sort of figures that just look a bit uninspired. But unfortunately, as you can see, because it's so delicate, we do have some broken spines here. I got the pieces here. I can fix those. That should be no problem, assuming I don't get super glue all over my fingers and muck it all up and then make a huge mess of it. Maybe I need to get some tweezers or something to help with that. So that's an issue. And oh man, I did bring this up in my post on Instagram, and Jinzo Studios actually did reply. I did bring it up saying that these should have been packaged in a box rather than in bubble wrap, and they replied that it's still 50-50 whether they package them in a box or bubble wrap. They still get complaints about them being broken, which I understand, because I also occasionally sell parts. Sometimes people ask me to duplicate parts of my MonsterArts figures, for example, and sometimes I help them out, and I make like a duplicate of a segment of a MonsterArts figure, and I post them over to them, and I make sure they're always packaged really well in a rigid box. And sometimes they arrive broken, I've heard as well. So that's happened before. But to just kind of say, you know, oh, it happens half-half that way anyway, that it's not really worth putting them in a box, I think is kind of silly, because mail is treated really not delicately, and these are very delicate. These are tiny pieces, and these I think could be so easily snapped. And the thing about bubble wrap is it does not protect from stuff getting crushed under pressure, from little fragile elements getting crushed under pressure. What it does help with is sort of hard impacts, just to help soften the blow of like bumps and tumbles and stuff like that. That's what padding's good at. But if you put a weight on it, that weight is still gonna penetrate through all this bubble wrap, through this packaging here. It's bendy. It's gonna snap these. So it's actually a miracle this is as intact as it is, I think, being posted in this kind of bubble wrap. So I don't know. I'm not too happy with the way they handled that. I would much rather have preferred a rigid box, and so that's why I'm actually deciding to unbox the rest of these on film. So there's some sort of evidence that you can see how they actually came out in postage. Let's see, we got knee, itch knee. This one is looking better. Okay. There we go. There's one of them that's not messed up. Look at that. I might actually... Can you see that? Is it in focus? Okay, that is nice. Okay. The details on these are crazy. I'm really happy with these. Broken off horn there. I think that's actually intentional from... I have to check the film, but from what I've heard, that's actually accurate to the characters. So that's actually pretty cool. I don't remember if this one had like a slightly damaged horn in the film, but from what I've seen in some of the comments of people talking about these particular figures, that is the case. Or rather, these particular heads. So I'll try and remember which one's which. So Kevin, Knee, which is the middle one, and Itch, which is the one on the left-hand side. Or, no, right-hand side from Ghidorah's perspective, left-hand side from his victim's perspective. Carefully opening this one up. Unraveling it. We got the bottom jaw again. Beautifully detailed. You can see the little hole there for what would be the tongue on a little ball joint. So we do need to clean up some of the little 3D printing imperfections there. I think there's a little bit of plastic just sticking off the end of that ball joint, but then we'll press into there. Of course, making sure to use heat to just make sure it's all soft enough to function, though not too much heat so it melts obviously, so maybe just a hairdryer or something like that. Okay, and then this one is intact, and oh, look at that detail. Those teeth. I don't know how they did it. Even MonsterArts figures, they rarely get the sharpness of like the teeth this accurate. Although, I guess they do, but it's still really cool to see. And in here in the back, got like this hole here, and I believe these little pieces, you have to glue them in there, and that's where the ball joint pops in. So you can probably pop the ball joint in first and then glue it in there when you're like ready, but I do need to clean some of that plastic off the back of these first. So it's gonna be a little process actually getting these ready, but I'm glad that they're not damaged like Kevin. I'm sad that it's Kevin who's the one that's damaged, because Kevin's my favorite, because, you know, obviously, who doesn't love Kevin? There we go. Yeah, 2 spines that are damaged, unfortunately. I don't know why the MonsterArts had to mess it up. Like, I had really high hopes that the MonsterArts would just be like the definitive figure, because I didn't want to have to go get like an X Plus version of this guy, because I just want to have like one figure that's just the ideal version of this guy and have it done with, because Ghidorah figures are expensive as is, and the MonsterArts one in particular is really expensive for what it is. So for it to just not be screen accurate in such a blatant way in the most important part of the figure, which is the heads, the faces, is just such a disappointment. But on the other hand, what I am actually planning on doing is installing these heads, and also I'm also planning on getting the W Dragon Ghidorah. So I've already pre-ordered it, so it's going to be about in the same scale as the X Plus that's coming out. I've actually already also ordered the X Plus, but I might have to cancel it because I don't think I can afford both. And I really like the look of the W Dragon one, because I think they really got the faces right. Because there's just something really cool about the specific design of these faces. There's just the expressions on them, the meanness, just that kind of joy in being vicious that they have, that I really enjoy, their personality. So I really want to get a really good figure of them. So glad these finally arrived. Glad I can actually see them all. They're so tiny, so delicate, really beautifully done. Despite me complaining a lot about the packaging for these, I really have to commend Zetto.Jo and Jinzo Studios for creating such beautiful little replacement parts. The only other bit that I'm worried about with these is how they will look with the oversized necks, because of course I didn't get the versions of sort of the slimmer necks that kind of taper down a little bit. What I'm actually thinking about doing is maybe I could adapt the necks from one of the bootleg Ghidorah figures that I have in my collection, that like bootleg special color version King Ghidorah. Maybe I could use those necks and maybe even like add some sculpted detail because I'm not too precious about that figure. I'd rather have one perfect 2019 Ghidorah than like an additional Heisei Ghidorah, I guess. Which, if you're aware, that bootleg figure actually uses the body of the third-party 1964 Ghidorah, so the necks on it are actually from that Ghidorah. But we'll see. I'll think of something, but these might just look fine on the stock necks of the actual MonsterArts 2019 Ghidorah. They might look okay, even though those necks are really oversized. But yeah, I'm gonna leave this here, guys. I hope to see you in one of my future videos, but until then, may all your vinyl be irradiated vinyl. Over and out. Bye.